All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cover how we can bridge the gap between reality-based self-defense and combat sports, in this case boxing. And this is one of the means that we try to use boxing in a self-defense context, how we tweak it a little bit to fit into, make it more functional for self-defense. So in self-defense, people always talk about the passive stance. So the passive stance is basically where you have your two hands up and you talk from here. This is the universal side for I don't want any trouble if someone pulls out a gun. That's what we generally do. And that's what's encouraged in a fight under the pretense that if my hands are like this, the person or the aggressor does not realize that I'm actually getting myself into a stance. And I'm not too sure about that. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think perhaps that's a little bit askew because it's not that different from, your Krav triangle, your karate hands or whatever else. And I think there's a better way to do it. But if we go over the passive stance, if I bring in Aaron, one thing about the passive stance is his right hand, if he's in a stance, is basically my right hand blocks his left hand, my left hand blocks his right hand. Any good fighting system will do that. And there's a multitude of reasons why, but the most obvious one is if I go to block his left hand with my left hand, I'm leaving myself open for that cross that's generally coming in most systems. So there's a number of reasons why, but that's all you really need to know. So the thing about that is, right hand to right hand, left hand, left hand. This lends itself to the next one that we go through. And the next one we do is basically called half guard. So we refer to that as full guard. Full guard we use when we know it's inevitable or we think it's inevitable that it's going to go physical. When there's a really good high probability that that's going to happen. But we can't do it all the time. For example, if I'm sitting on a bus, I can't sit there like this, but making myself prepared if I think this guy's going to do something. I can't do that. That might exacerbate it. So instead we have half guard. So if that's full guard, half guard becomes this. Okay, so we have one arm up. Some people refer to it as a thinking man pose and a number of different things. I think this is a superior way because we can use this more than we can the passive stance or full guard. Now, one thing about it is I encourage everyone to have their left hand up, primarily because 80% of the population is right-handed. So again, if we go to that right hand to left hand business, my left hand's up, it'll stop 80% of the people who are going to throw a punch with their right hand at me. Exceptions to the rule are if I happen to be facing this way and he's on the right hand side of me, then I'll put my right hand up just so that there's that little physical barrier. And the other thing is too, if I'm good enough to realize and take note of his feet, if he has his left foot back, then there's a good chance that he's a lefty and it's going to be a left cross coming. So then I might adopt that stance. But again, these are high percentages. It's probably unrealistic to expect people to be able to make that judgment call in that moment. So again, if we look at this stance as well that I'm in, and I'm a lefty, so for that very reason, if you look at how I'm standing now, it's basically the boxing Philly shell. Okay, so if you have a look at it, it's not that different to the Philly shell that you'll see Floyd Mayweather and James Toney and people like that utilizing. And so that's a really good, defensive system if you already have it in your arsenal. And I'm a big advocate of head movement in fighting or in self-defense, and it's often overlooked because it's really useful. So if I'm in that stance, if I'm in my Philly shell or my thinking man stance or half guard as we call it, and the punches that he would generally throw at me, wouldn't be a jab. It's going to be a hook with either hand or a right cross. So if we start with the most common one, which will be a right hook, I have options. I've got my arm there that I can use to block. Again, I've got head movement. If he makes it into a right cross, I can parry it. I can slip it. If it's a left hook, again, I can cover up, and it allows me, time. It gives me that moment to deflect that first strike, and then I got to get back in the game somehow. The other thing about it is as well, from this stance, I believe it's far more under the radar than the passive stance, definitely. But on top of that, it allows us, if our defense is not based on head movement or parrying or blocking or whatever terminology you use, if it's covering and crashing, which is a big part of reality-based self-defense, it allows us to do the boxing cross guard cover, which is what George Foreman, made famous, which is generally that. So, if I'm sitting there talking and someone throws anything at me, I can cover up, protect my head and go from there. So again, if I'm here, he throws a shot, whatever it is, I cover up, my head's protected, because as we know in self-defense, people are primarily headhunters. They don't often go to the body, very rarely. Everyone's headhunters. So from that position, whatever he throws, I can cover up in one of the ways that I see fit. Okay, so it works really, really well. So the thing about this stance as well, it's great for offense as well. So if I'm standing in my normal position and I'm standing here like this talking to him, and for some reason I need to be, proactive and throw the first shot, I've got my straight left, straight down the middle. All right, other options are if I'm standing there talking and perhaps he gets a little bit too close to me, I've got that groin shot from there, which will then open up, allow me to open up with other shots. Now, if I'm facing this way, maybe there's two of them, maybe for some reason his point of entry is to the left of me, I've got that, that basically hammer fist from there that I can drop into and then get into my strikes. If he happens to be over this side of me, I've got this that I can then get into the game as well. Now, I'm not the biggest advocate of hammer fists because they're often obstructed. But if his hands are up in some kind of position and I throw it, I can then, clear that hand, even if it's for a moment, even if I'm not lucky enough to grab it like this because he's being compliant, and then I can unload with my shots and move from there. So it's really good in that respect too. And lastly, if you're a grappler who has difficulty striking, it's a good way to get inside and use as a delivery system to be able to wrestle and do the things that you do. So again, if I'm here and he throws that shot and I cover up, bam, I'm in. And then now I'm in that position. If I'm a close quarter combat person, I can go to work there. If I'm a wrestler, whatever. So there's a lot of benefits to it. It's just one of the ways that we, one of our modules is basically boxing for self-defense. This is one of the principles that we teach, and you can see we're bridging that gap. And those people that distinguish and go, combat sports don't work for self-defense, you really got to review what you do because they do.